Hello, I'm still here at Clore Leadership Pulse. It is day 2 of the second residential of Clore Leadership Pulse for 2020. So I'm still in Norton Park. We've just had our first full day back at Clore. So yeah, as usual, brain is firing off loads of stuff because I've been taking a lot of information in. But yeah, so today we have done an awful lot about change. So personal change, organisational change, team change. And putting that in that kind of leadership context. So we've been looking at how we might change things in our own lives or in our own professional world, or how we might influence change in others. And that could be colleagues and teams, that could be in terms of organisations. So Amanda Smethurst, who's one of our course facilitators, has run today's session. So it was quite nice to see Amanda doing what she normally does, like doing this session with us. So that was really nice, and somebody who knows us, and we've built that relationship of trust up. So I think we were all quite receptive, and Amanda knows how to kind of work with us and get the best out of us and encourage us. So we looked at various different styles of leadership and of influencing, and how we can enact certain skills and approaches to facilitate change. So, you know, we looked at different things, like we looked at for example, different models. So we looked at like transactional analysis, and talking about kind of the parents and the adult and the child ego, and in terms of how those relationships with people can cross over and coexist. So for example, if you have a kind of parental ego, there is a sense of wanting to control a little bit, and give instruction. There is and finding it difficult to deal with somebody who isn't behaving in the same way. There's the child ego, which is very different, which is a bit more resistant, and then the adult is a bit more of a kind of even footing. So you find parents and child egos can kind of work in a diagonal like that, I guess, in terms of how the relationships coexist, and adult is more horizontal and going like that. So those kind of relationships can be forced upon people. So if you're in a relationship with somebody professionally or personally, and they have a kind of adult ego, as a parent ego, which they're trying to lead or kind of control a conversation or a situation, then people's child ego can come out then, that they feel like there's a resistance or they're not being trusted, and that kind of interpersonal relationship then becomes crystallized in a way, whereas adult ego is a bit more of a kind of even, respectful relationship where people are talking quite openly and trusting each other to have a proper kind of engaged conversation. So there's a lot of theories that came in. We talked about Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, so that's psychological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Now, Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs is something that I think a lot of people are familiar with, but it's good to put it in a context like this to look at the way that relates to leadership and to management and to change, and actually understanding where, if there is anything lacking in that hierarchy of needs, what that means for everything else. And in terms of facilitating change, do you need to make change to give you the thing that is missing, or has change impacted on that hierarchy of needs that you haven't necessarily recognized? We've looked at how there's a bit of a kind of the grief cycle, I guess, really. The Kubler-Ross model, which is looking at a kind of response to negatively perceived change. And it's one of those things that you see quite a lot in terms of the 7 stages of grief. So, the kind of anger, denial, acceptance kind of stuff. That comes into the Kubler-Ross model, and putting it in that professional context, or the personal context of how you respond to change, is, bringing a lot of these kind of thinkers and philosophers and theorists into this learning is actually really valuable, because so much of what we're learning can be put in a practical context in terms of our own lives, but it's nice to have the theoretical underpinning that we don't necessarily recognize. Like, there's so many things that come out of Clore where I just go, oh, I do that, or I'm thinking that way, but I didn't recognize it's an actual thing. So like Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, going back to that being an example of, it's a basic understanding of human needs, and they are things that most of us, it's, the theory behind it is that we all need those things to a degree. But we don't consciously necessarily think about that. But when someone lays it down, you go, yeah, of course I need those things. Of course I need those things to give me that sense of purpose and of drive and of motivation to do things. So being able to understand what drives change and where you may or may not need change is really useful. We looked at the McGregor XY theory, which is a style of kind of different approaches to management, I guess, is the best way to describe it. There's a kind of top down and the bottom up style, I guess. The X model is the kind of top down, where there's not a great deal of trust or faith in a team to do something, so they are instructed. It becomes a very kind of a difficult relationship because that trust doesn't exist in there. And there's a lack of belief in a staff team, whereas the Y relationship is kind of managing from the bottom up. So it's like inspiring and believing in your team of staff to be able to do something. I think the way that's framed out is Y is obviously the better model, because encouraging people and giving people empowerment is a really positive thing. But there's equally a place of going, sometimes you just need to instruct. There's so many things that get kind of fired off, and we talked about change more generally. There's a really lovely phrase that was coming, a quote from Maya Angelou that was used. I'll just read it out. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that's a really kind of important thing, because that's true of us. You can look back at times where you just go, oh, I was at work, or I had a personal relationship, and my relationship with that person made me feel this way, but you can't pinpoint exactly what it was necessarily. You can look at certain things, but those relationships become a cacophony of things that come together. So how you feel about a situation doesn't necessarily mean the actual the thing that happened. It's how that thing made you feel is the thing that lasts. So that's quite a profound quote, I guess. And it's Maya Angelou. It's bound to be an amazing quote, because Maya Angelou is Maya Angelou. But we also talked about influence and the ability to, what influence is in terms of kind of encouraging and facilitating change. And we talked about push and pull influencing as models of influencing. So push influencing is looking at being persuasive and being assertive. So kind of outlining like proposals and using reasoning and being, I guess it's less emotive and a bit more based in fact, I think is a good way to describe it. So that's something that I think that I can do quite naturally and quite easily, in a way of giving the evidence and the facts and saying to people, so here are the stats, it's context wise of like something work related, of going, I think we should do this. Here are the facts that outline what we are aiming to achieve, or what the current situation is, and that's what we're moving towards. Pull influencing is a little bit different. It's a bit more, I guess, kind of artistic and creative. So you use kind of visionary language and you talk about bridging. So what you're doing there is you are painting a picture of what could be, and then you are encouraging people to be a part of that process with you. And equally, as much as I'm saying about push influencing, I think pull influencing I also do as well. It depends on context. So blue sky thinking, in the arts, we do that a lot of kind of having a vision and selling a vision to people. There was a really good comment that Anne-Marie made in our group today. She did a workshop with somebody that was based around fundraising with Bill Bruty, and he was talking about funding and doing funding bits. If you can make one paragraph emotive in a funding application, it will stand out. We do a lot of funding applications and we deal with kind of push influencing and we talk about stats and data, but we're talking about art and creativity. So having pull influencing and having a bit of creative and visionary language in there is potentially really useful. So that's a really kind of great thing. And pull influencing creates this space for honesty with people. You actually encourage people to say, what do you think we should do? And you're not trying to steer people in a certain direction, which can sometimes create resistance. You're encouraging people to be a part of the process. When you're going through change, you want people to buy in. You want people to buy into a change. It's quite difficult to impose change on people. Anyone who's in their life who's experienced change, significant change, if you don't feel you have control of that change, then you can resist it an awful lot more. You can find it a lot harder than if you're part of that journey and you have that ownership and agency over it. So, but push and pull influencing aren't mutually exclusive. You will take elements of different approaches depending on the context. So you don't just take a push influencing approach or a pull influencing approach. You use both in the way that feels right. It's understanding those different styles is the thing that's quite interesting. We put some of that kind of into practice. We did a bit of coaching about making change. What change would we like to see? What change would we like to have in our own personal lives, and how would we do that? So we looked at different types of change. So there's kind of transitional and transformational change, and there's organizational and personal change. We had a kind of axis that we had to go, are you making a transitional change or a transformational change? Is it an organizational change or a personal change? And then we were working in smaller groups based on that type of change, and we coached each other basically. And that's a nice thing about these situations as well, that we work together. Not everything is taught to us, that we are self-teaching, we're self-supporting and self-facilitating. So the fact that we could go off in a group of our peers, of fellow Clories, and support each other through these processes was really nice. And then after that, we had a leadership perspectives session with Teo Greenstreet, who was a really interesting presentation. The leadership perspective stuff's quite interesting. One of the things we have said, we picked up on, I said to a couple of people, and we said, is that there's a lot of stories of people from leadership perspectives. It feels like they're accidentally falling upwards, they're failing upwards in a way, of people just like, oh, I applied for a job, didn't think I got it, and then I kept getting these jobs. And it's fascinating to go, these people have clearly got skills and leaderships, and it's great that those things can happen, but it all kind of feels a little bit easy sometimes. And Teo was talking and was quite honest about a lot of the challenges that he's dealt with and the things he's had to deal with in his career. He's been in some quite difficult situations, but also he's kind of been able to identify opportunities. And I guess he's worked in a position of being brought into organizations and consulted, but has also led organizations from the beginning. And there was a breadth of perspectives from him, which was really fascinating. There were a few mentions of places that I know of locally, so like Encounters based in Totnes, and then the Swamp Circus, who are down in the southwest as well. Like, these names kept picking up. I was like, I know these people, I know the context of what you're talking about, which was quite fascinating. But yeah, I mean, just there were interesting things about, he talked about doing a business plan and saying, how do you just go from beyond being precarious and surviving, and how do you thrive? How do you prepare for growth? Like, all of these things are really fascinating kind of provocations, I guess. Really, it wasn't necessarily about going, here's how you do it. It was like, here's the question. And Hillary was saying about this in the very first kind of leadership perspective thing we had, about it's not necessarily having the answers, but having the right questions. And those are kind of questions that are really useful to be provoked with in this kind of place. So it was quite nice to have a session that wasn't just a bit like, oh, I applied for a job and I got the job and I kept applying for other jobs and kept getting the jobs, and it all just happened. It was so nice, and I'm doing great things, and not to diminish the successes those people have had, but just having a bit more of a kind of conversation about where it's not quite so straightforward, of actually really reflecting on the challenges that have existed, and the difficult decisions that had to be made, and how that's impacted on Teo from a personal perspective, and also the people around, which has been really fascinating. And he's still going through those processes. He's doing it now with Green Top, which used to be Swamp Circus, and they're going through a period of transition. He'll know the results of if that's worked in a couple of years. So but the leadership perspective thing's quite interesting. It's nice to have the nice when we get the breadth of people who come in, and I'm still conscious of, I kind of want to talk to more people about that personally going out, because he was talking from a smaller scale perspective, which was quite interesting, because a lot of things were quite big. But I want to talk to the people who have struggled, who've really taken years to get where they want to be. That feels slightly more reflective of some of my experiences. So I want to maybe go out of Clore and try and find some of those people and talk to them about their leadership experience. But yeah, I mean, Clore provokes you to keep taking things forward, so that's quite useful. And we've still got another day and a half of this residential, and then another residential in the end of March. So there's plenty more learning to come, and maybe those things will come into this whole experience. But I'm not letting Clore do all the work for me. I'm going to do some work outside of Clore as well, because that's the point. You don't just come to something like this and go, it's fixed me, thanks guys. You are also looking to go, it's provoking me, and what am I going to do now? What questions am I going to ask that are going to really fill in those gaps for me and are really going to keep me moving forward? So that's my kind of, in the learning zone thing where I am. That's what I want to keep doing moving forward. So Clore is amazing and it's transformational for me. It really is. But it's not everything. If you're doing Clore, you need to keep doing stuff yourself. If you don't get to do Clore, you don't need Clore to make that change. You can do an awful lot yourself. Again, I said before, I would like to think that some of these videos could be useful for people to get a sense of what they can do, whether they want to do Clore, but what they could learn from what Clore teaches you without having to be here. And part of that's one of my things, going, what can you do yourself that you can influence that change and have that learning and not have to rely on doing a Clore course or any kind of leadership course to be able to do it. So that's my kind of challenge to people, is going, what can you do yourself that will help you understand that leadership development and those challenges that you want to head on. So yeah, that's provocation for you there. But it's a big day. I've rambled on for a lot today. I feel like I'm talking more in these videos than I was in the first residential, and I'm kind of word vomiting a little bit, but yeah, it's a really useful day today about thinking about change. That feels, from my personal perspective, something that is quite an important thing. I think you do things like Clore and you're all thinking about change anyway. So yeah, there's a lot to take away from today. So that is us for now. Tomorrow we talk about difficult conversations, which is going to be quite interesting. But we also do our friends and family exercise, where we've been asked to get friends and family to give us talk positively about us and things that they would say about us, but what are good qualities. And I have a whole load here in envelopes that I have not yet opened, and I've resisted to look at them. So tomorrow I'll look at them and hopefully people have said nice things. But no matter what they've said, it's good to get different perspective from people about what you do and what kind of a leader you are, I guess. So I am resisting looking at those today. I'm going to look at them tomorrow before the main session that we're meant to do. So envelopes will stay closed on my desk here. But yes, that's enough rambling for me for tonight. I am going to go and chill out and then get some sleep. And I am claiming I'm going to the gym tomorrow morning. I probably won't go to the gym tomorrow morning, but I will wake up and do another day of Clore. So for me today, I say goodnight and I will speak to you tomorrow. Bye.